Spice drop.
Second Kitchen Sounds.
What up, Spice Droppers? This is Charlie coming at you from Ferndale, Michigan. Today, we are making bread pudding. But we're not just making any bread pudding.
We call it Second Kitchen Sounds for a special reason. That's because we're cooking everything in any season.
I made a video a couple weeks ago that I'll put a link into in the description for apple cider drop donuts. You can use those for this. I know in that video I said I was using those for this, but I ate most of them. I bought my donuts at Franklin Cider Mill in Franklin, Michigan. Now, before I start, I did take about a cup and a half of unpasteurized apple cider and I reduced it down. We probably have about a half cup in here. I only really need a third cup, so we're good. And I also set my oven to 250 because we're gonna take the cinnamon raisin bread, so we need this to be a little bit like a quarter of the way to a crouton. When you're making bread pudding, you want semi-stale bread to use because it'll keep its texture while it also soaks in the custard we're gonna be putting in it. The donuts I got a few days ago, so those are fine, those are ready to go. Okay, so like I said, I have my donuts here, crunched up into somewhat inch-sized pieces, and then I have about a half of a loaf of cinnamon raisin bread. And I'm just gonna cut it into 3x3 pieces. Yeah, maybe 3x2. You know, separate that. We got all these pieces here. I have my oven preset to 250. We're gonna put these on a tray. Voila, spread them out evenly. And we're gonna toast them for 8 minutes. Now, like I said, we have our reduction of apple cider, and that has been cooling for a while because we're gonna mix this in with eggs, and everything needs to be cool enough where it's not going to scramble those eggs while we're mixing it. So, we are going to make our custard. Okay, to make the custard, I took 3 tablespoons of butter, I have a half cup of white sugar, I have a quarter teaspoon of salt, and I took 2 cups of milk. We want this to be scalded. We don't want a rolling boil. We just want it to be barely starting to show those signs of boiling. So the bread is ready now. We just took it out of the oven. It still has give, but it is clearly toasted. You can still feel the moisture of the bread inside, which is perfect because that's going to absorb all this custard. Okay, so you can see now it's starting to bubble up on the sides. It's foaming up a little bit. We're right where we want to be with this. We're going to take this off heat and we're going to let that cool while we prep our pan for the bread pudding. Okay, so here I have about a 10 by 5, 10 by 6 baking dish. You can use an 8 by 8. You can use any baking dish you want for this. You just don't want any of that delicious bread sticking to the sides. Throw the bread in. And then we're gonna throw our donuts in. Delicious. So we got 10 donuts and about a half a loaf of bread in there. We're gonna just take that and mix it a little bit so that all the cinnamon raisin bread's not on bottom. And then we also want to smooth it out so it's somewhat even on the top. So now that that's there, we're gonna let this custard mix cool down a little bit more and keep working on that. So now that my reduced apple cider is cooled down, I took a third cup and set that aside for later use. And I cleaned out the pot it was in. I'm gonna take 2 more cups of milk and we're gonna scald this. Because what we're doing, we're taking the custard that we were making currently and we're gonna coat that and let the bread and the donuts soak that up. We're gonna take a thicker custard and coat the top so it kind of glazes over everything. And then we're gonna add candied pecans on top of that. Spice droppers, I think we're cool enough to start going. We got our first 2 cups of milk here with the butter and the sugar cooled down. I have my second 2 cups of scalded milk here that I just took off heat. So those are set aside. So now we're gonna focus on this first bit of custard. to this mixture, which again has cooled down. I don't have heat on, so we do not want to whisk these eggs in on heat because again, we do not want the eggs to scramble in there. I'm going to add 1 tablespoon of vanilla extract. I'm going to add the 1/3 cup of apple cider reduction. And now I'm going to add 3 eggs to this, one at a time, to thicken up that custard. 1. We're going to whisk that in. Egg number 2. Boop. Whisk that in. If you're worried about shells getting in there, just break them into a separate bowl and then pour them in one at a time. So let's add the 3rd egg. Oop, might get some shell in there, just kidding. Boop, 3. So this is ready to go. So now we're going to pour this onto the bread. And just slowly kind of make sure you cover everything. We want a nice even custard on all the bread, get in all the nooks and crannies. Make sure to try to get on the edge. Don't try to get on the edge, get on the edge. And see. Now we're gonna let this sit and soak up that deliciousness while the oven preheats to 450. You do want to, while it's soaking, push everything down so that everything is evenly coated. You don't want to mush the bread either. But yeah, we got that nice and coated. All the donuts are submerged. Spice droppers, look at what we're doing. We're like making possibly the best dessert ever and best breakfast ever. I don't know, what would this be? I would eat this for both. I would probably eat this for lunch. We're gonna throw this in for about 40 to 50 minutes. And while we're doing that, we're gonna start the candied pecans. Now what we want to do, we want to make like a candy coating. We're trying to get this sugar to 300 degrees so that we have a hard crack on it. We have the pecans here. It's gonna make them crispy, crunchy, delicious little morsels. They're great on ice cream. They're great in salads. I don't know. They're great everywhere. They're just fucking great. I got 1 cup of brown sugar. I have a 1/2 teaspoon of cinnamon, and then I have a 1/2 teaspoon of salt. Again, we're on no heat. We're gonna take a whole nutmeg, and we're gonna grate some of that in there. About a 1/4 teaspoon. Now we're gonna take 3 tablespoons of water, put that in there, and we're gonna mix this up until everything's kind of mixed together. We don't want any big chunks of brown sugar. We want the nutmeg and the cinnamon to be mixed throughout. But so we're good there. Now we're gonna get this up to heat. Once this starts bubbling, we're gonna add the pecans. Now while you're doing this, take a pan and cover it with parchment paper because once those are ready, it's a very quick process to get them off the heat onto parchment paper so that they don't just clump together. We're bubbling now. I took a healthy cup of pecans and we're just gonna dump those in there. So we got those mixed in. Cover that. I don't have an exact cover for this pot, so we're gonna do that, but it's nice because we can still see in there to know what's happening. And this should only take a few minutes. Look at those in there, so delicious. Stir them around. Get that delicious glaze over everything. Spice droppers, we're almost at the hard crack stage. So again, get everything ready because this is a fast moving process. Get a couple forks ready because again, we don't want clumps, so we're gonna have to spoon these or fork these out and spread them out. And I believe we are there. Now take them out a little bit at a time, and then again, spread them out. But we're going to set these aside because the bread pudding is about to come out. Then we're going to make that other custard to put on top and throw these on top of that. Would you just look at that? It smells amazing in here. Oh man, this is going to be good. So I'm going to take this 2 cups of scalded milk, set it aside. We're going to clean this out and use this to make a roux. So for this roux, we're going to take 2 tablespoons of butter. and heat that. Once that is melted down, we are going to whisk in 2 tablespoons of all-purpose flour. 2, and whisk. Again, low heat. Keep it on low heat so that it doesn't scald or burn or get too much darker than it already is. So once we're here, we're going to slowly whisk in this 2 cups of scalded milk. Just little by little, keep the whisk going. You don't want anything to burn. It's on pretty low heat, so it's not going to burn if you keep whisking. Now to this, I'm also going to add half a cup of brown sugar. So bam. Now we're going to turn up the heat a little bit so that it kind of melts that sugar into that milky concoction. Throw in some cinnamon, another half teaspoon. Half a teaspoon of vanilla in here. I'm going to take the half of the nutmeg that I have in there. Grate that into here too. And now, what does this mean, Spice Droppers? This means taste, not waste. That's amazing. But we're about ready. I'm just going to let that simmer a little bit more, and then we'll pour that on top, put the pecans on, cut out a piece for the Spice Droppers to eat! We're exactly where we want to be. Now that this is starting to bubble, you can see it thickening up a little bit. Alright, so now our delicious topping is ready. We're going to pour that right on top. And again, this is something you could keep on the side if you wanted to and serve it table side. But I'm just going to throw that on there. And we're just going to kind of put those everywhere. I do have more pecans that I'm going to put on, but I just want to bite into this because this smells amazing. Look at that. Oh, that looks delicious, smells delicious. It's going to be delicious. Spice Droppers, I gotta be honest, this time we really did it again. Look at that, it's so fluffy. That topping is just so thick and creamy. But man. Oh man. I could eat this whole thing right now. It's like French toast times 1,000. Spice Droppers, thank you so much. Make this, impress your friends and family. Peace and love. We love you.
Second Kitchen Sounds.
Let me get a little more. Oh man.
We call it Second Kitchen Sounds for a special reason. That's cause we're cooking everything in any season. Plenty seasoning on the food when we're preparing it.